There is a weight that no hand can measure and no scale can define. It does not rest on your shoulders, but you feel it pressing down. It does not bind your ankles, yet it keeps you from rising. And it is this weight, invisible, yet undeniable, that keeps so many of us from taking the flight into peace, into purpose, into freedom. It is the weight of what we refuse to release. The stories we rehearse, the wounds we keep fresh, the guilt we cradle like a memory we believe we must protect. And though we long to soar, we stay grounded because we've convinced ourselves that to let go is to forget, but forgetting is not the way forward. Releasing is. You cannot take flight while dragging yesterday behind you like a rusted anchor. You cannot rise into the light of your divine essence while gripping the shadows of resentment. The soul was not designed for heaviness. The soul was made to move like wind through skylight, spacious, free, but ego convinces us that our identity depends on the weight we carry, that our suffering is who we are, that our hurt makes us real. And so we hold on, we grip tightly to the pain, thinking it gives us meaning. But I ask you now, what has pain truly given you besides more of itself? You were not born into this world to suffer endlessly under the burden of your past. You were not sent here by Source to collect wounds like medals and wear your trauma like a crown of proof. You were born to remember that you are already whole, already enough, already free. But you cannot awaken to that truth if your hands are full of what no longer serves you. Flight requires emptiness. Not emptiness in the sense of lack, but the kind of emptiness that is sacred, the emptiness of surrender, of openness, of trust. Birds do not rise by adding more weight to their wings. They rise because they were never meant to carry anything but the wind. And you, dear soul, were never meant to carry all that you're holding. Let go, not because it erases the past, but because the past was never meant to be your prison. Let go of who they said you were. Let go of what didn't happen the way you hoped. Let go of the apology that never came. Let go of the outcome you never received. Let go of the belief that you are broken. You are not broken. You are burdened. And there's a great difference. A bird with a stone in its beak is not incapable of flight. It simply needs to drop what it's holding. And the most powerful act you can perform in this lifetime is to unclench your spiritual fists and release what you've clung to for far too long. We live in a world that glorifies accumulation of things, of titles, of experiences, but also of wounds, of grievances, of stories. But your path to peace is subtraction, not addition. Every spiritual master, every awakened soul, every truly liberated being will tell you it's not what you gain that sets you free, it's what you release. The Buddha did not awaken by becoming more. He awakened by becoming less identified with form, with desire, with self. What are you willing to become less of so that you can become more of what you truly are? Are you willing to be less right so you can be more peaceful? Are you willing to be less certain so you can be more trusting? Are you willing to be less attached so you can be more free? Because to fly, you must let the heaviness fall away. And the heaviest thing you carry is the belief that you must carry it. There is a sacred law of the universe that is always at work. The more you resist letting go, the more you attract situations that force you to. Because your soul knows what your ego denies that your healing is in the release. That freedom is not granted by anything outside you. It is unveiled when you unbind yourself from within. So many people pray for peace but refuse to put down the sword. So many seek happiness while holding on to what hurts. But you cannot have both. You cannot live in the light and feed the shadows. You cannot ascend while gripping the ground, and you cannot evolve while protecting your pain. You have a choice. And this moment, this very breath, is the threshold. You can continue to identify with your wounds. you can keep rehearsing the stories of what they did, what you lost, what didn't go your way. Or you can stop. You can take a holy pause and you can say to yourself, I've carried this long enough. I don't need this to be me anymore. This is not denial. This is liberation. Forgiveness is not weakness. It is wisdom. Releasing is not passive. It is powerful. It is not forgetting the past. It is understanding that your past does not have the authority to define your future unless you keep giving it the microphone. You came here to transcend, to transmute, to rise beyond, not to escape life, but to remember who you are within it. And you are not the hurt you experienced. You are the awareness that held it. You are not the betrayal. You are the witness. You are not the grief. You are the vast presence in which that grief arose and passed. You are not the weight. You are the sky. And nothing that happened in your story is heavy enough to keep you from remembering your true nature unless you decide it is. Take a moment now, not with your mind, but with your heart. Ask yourself quietly, what have I made heavier than it needs to be? What story are you still living inside of that no longer matches your vision of peace? What label, what memory, what name or identity have you fused with your sense of self, and does it still serve your highest path? If it doesn't, let it go. If it hurts, bless it and let it go. If it stirs up anger, acknowledge it and let it go. If it makes you feel like less than the infinite soul you are, breathe deeply and let it go. No one will do this for you. This is your sacred responsibility. No one else is inside your consciousness with a broom, sweeping out the resentment, the doubt, the guilt. Only you can do that. And you do it not because others deserve it, but because you do. You deserve peace. You deserve to wake up unburdened. You deserve to feel light. And flight, true spiritual flight, is what happens when the soul remembers that its natural state is freedom. You are not your wounds. You are not your fears. You are not the broken dreams or the roads that didn't lead where you hoped. You are the one who has survived it all and now stands at the edge of a new becoming. But you can't take off until you release what weighs you down. The caterpillar must surrender the ground before it becomes the butterfly. The leaf must release the tree to dance with the wind. And the soul must release the ego's grip to remember it was never confined to begin with. Release is the sacred act of trust. It is saying to the universe, I no longer choose to carry what you never asked me to hold. You don't heal by holding tighter. You heal by surrendering. And as you surrender, a miracle occurs. The heart begins to lighten, the breath deepens, the mind softens, the world looks less threatening, love finds you more easily, joy visits more often. And suddenly the life you were meant to live is no longer on hold because you stop carrying the delay disguised as pain. You are not behind, you are not late, you are exactly where you need to be to remember the sky has always been waiting for you to rise. So often we say we want to be free, but what we really mean is we want to be free on our terms. We want to let go, but only if we know what will come next. We want to trust, but only if we can control the outcome. And this is where most souls stall. Not because life isn't offering us wings, but because we're still trying to fly while dragging the ground behind us. But let me ask you this. Has clinging ever brought you peace? Has gripping ever led to grace? Or have you noticed that every time you let go, really let go, the next step appeared more clearly, the burden grew lighter, and something inside you finally exhaled? The irony of the spiritual path is that we do not grow by adding more. We grow by shedding what was never us to begin with. Not one layer of pain was your true self. Not one scar defined you. Not one fearful thought ever spoke with the voice of your soul. And yet, we identify with them because we've forgotten the art of being rather than becoming. We think we must become something extraordinary. But the soul is already extraordinary. The only task is to remove what clouds that remembrance, like a sculptor chipping away at marble to reveal the figure within your journey. It's not about chasing something new. It's about uncovering what has always been there. Your divine essence, and this essence is weightless. You do not need to fix yourself. You only need to free yourself. You don't need to gather more knowledge. You need to unlearn the lies. You don't need to become powerful. You already are. You simply need to drop the thoughts, the judgments, the traumas, and the identities that told you otherwise. The ego says, you must be more. The soul whispers, you already are. And when you listen closely, you will hear that whisper underneath every heartbeat, every breath, every still moment where you're not trying to be anything, you are simply present. In that moment, you are flying. Because flight is not a destination, it is a state of being. It is alignment with who you truly are beneath the noise. Now, you may ask, how do I begin to let go? You begin by notice when a thought carries heaviness. Notice when a memory returns not to heal you, but to punish you. Notice when a belief makes your chest tight or your energy dim. That is not truth. That is ego disguised as memory. And you have the power right here, right now, to witness it, thank it for its role, and release it like a bird from the cage of your mind. This is not a one-time act. It is a sacred practice. Every day, you must ask yourself, does this thought serve my flight? Does this feeling expand me or bind me? Is this belief lifting me or holding me down? If it is not helping you soar, it is not coming from your highest self. Release it. You don't need it. And in its place, choose a lighter thought, a loving thought, a truer thought. Choose gratitude over grievance. Choose faith over fear. Choose now over then. And choose to see every single moment of your life, even the painful ones, as teachers rather than burdens. Because when you shift your perception, what once weighed you down becomes the very force that lifts you. Do you see the paradox? What was once pain becomes purpose. What was once failure becomes foundation. What was once sorrow becomes spaciousness. But only when you stop resisting, only when you stop identifying with it as you. And in that sacred shift, the alchemy of awakening your soul begins to remember you were never the wound. You were always the healer. You were never the broken piece. You were always the whole. You were never the story. You were always the silent awareness in which the story unfolded. And you were never meant to carry it all. That was never your purpose. So ask yourself now, what is the weight I've been carrying that I no longer wish to bring into tomorrow? Perhaps it's the weight of comparison, the belief that you must measure your worth against others, that if someone else succeeds, you've somehow failed, that your path must look like theirs to be valid. But the truth is, no two souls have the same sky to fly in. You have your own direction, your own design, your own sacred winds. And when you stop comparing your flight to someone else's, you begin to soar in your own unique rhythm. Or perhaps it's the weight of shame, the echo of past choices you no longer align with. But hear this with all your heart. You are not your past. You are the awareness that learned from it. Guilt serves no one when it becomes a home. Let it be a guide, not a jail. Take the lesson, release the judgment, and free yourself. The soul does not evolve by condemning itself. It evolves by choosing love again and again. Maybe the weight you carry is anger that hot, consuming fire that promises strength but only burns the vessel that holds it. Anger often masks grief, and grief is love with nowhere to go. Let it go. Not for them, for you. Because you were not born to be consumed by flames. You were born to be illuminated by light. Or perhaps it's the weight of the unknown, the fear of what you can't control, can't see, can't predict. But my friend, life was never meant to be controlled. It was meant to be trusted. Faith is the wings, uncertainty is the sky, and trust is the wind beneath it all. When you stop needing to know where you're going, you finally arrive in the now, and the now is the only place you ever truly had to be. So much of what we carry isn't ours to hold. We carry expectations we never agreed to, roles we never wanted, pain passed down through generations. But just because it's been handed to you does not mean you have to carry it forward. The chain ends when you say it does. The pattern dissolves when you choose to wake up. And waking up isn't always dramatic. Sometimes it's simply a moment of quiet clarity when you sit alone with your breath and realize, I'm done carrying what doesn't feel like love. That's the moment the flight begins. And once you taste it, even once, you will never forget what it feels like to be free. There is something miraculous that happens when you no longer resist the falling away, when you no longer mourn what is leaving, but bless it on its way. In that holy space, you are not losing, you are remembering. You are not being emptied, you are being refined. The acorn must crack for the oak to emerge. The shell must break for the light to pour in. And yes, it feels like loss, but in truth, it is birth. The death of who you are not is the beginning of who you've always been. Do not grieve what you release. It was never yours to keep. You are not here to hoard old identities. You are here to embody truth. And truth is light. Truth is weightless. Truth needs no defense, no protection, no mask. The most powerful thing you can do in a world obsessed with appearance is to become weightless, to become real, to say, I don't need to hold this story anymore. I don't need to defend this pain. I don't need to explain why I'm healing. I only need to return to peace. Because peace does not argue, peace does not beg, peace does not carry a ledger of wrongs. It does not keep score. Peace simply is. And when you stop trying to earn it, when you stop believing it must be deserved, you realize peace is your natural state. You were never without it. You were only distracted. The distractions came in many forms. The noise of comparison, the addiction to busyness, the need to be seen, the compulsion to be understood. But peace never left you. It was waiting quietly underneath the rubble of all that trying. Flight is not about rising above others. It is about rising above the noise, the inner dialogue that says, you're not enough, you haven't done enough, you don't deserve rest. That voice is not the voice of God. That is the voice of conditioning. And the moment you stop identifying with it, you begin to fly. Because flight isn't about escaping life, it's about engaging life from a higher vantage point. When a bird soars above the storm, it's not avoiding the sky, it's simply rising to where the storm no longer reaches. And so must you. There will always be chaos on the ground, always some drama, some fear, some grievance pulling at your feet. But you are not your feet, you are your wings. And your wings are made of faith, of surrender, of the deep knowing that you are carried by something greater than circumstance. What is this something greater? Call it what you will. God, source, the Tao, divine intelligence. The name matters less than the experience of it. And the experience of it is this: peace without reason, joy without cause, love without condition. When you rest in that space, you will realize nothing was ever missing. You just couldn't feel it through the weight you were carrying. Release is the doorway to the divine. You do not need to beg the universe for peace. You need only make space for it. Peace does not need to be created. It only needs to be uncovered. Imagine your soul as a radiant sun always shining. The clouds of resentment, fear, guilt, and control only obscure it, never extinguish it. The work is not to chase light. The work is to dissolve clouds. And how do you dissolve a cloud? Not with force, not with war, with awareness. Awareness is the great dissolver. When you see clearly what you've been carrying without judgment, without shame, the weight begins to lift. So take a breath now and simply ask, what am I ready to see? What truth have I avoided? Because I feared what it would ask me to release. Perhaps it's the truth that your identity is not in your trauma. Perhaps it's the truth that your worth is not defined by your productivity. Perhaps it's the truth that your pain has been a teacher, not a punishment. Or perhaps it's the truth that you're allowed to let go, even if no one else says sorry. There are no prerequisites to freedom. There is only your decision, your inner yes. And the moment you say yes to release, the sky opens, the burdens loosen, and your wings begin to stretch again. But the ego will not go quietly. It will tell you, if you let go, you'll be exposed. If you release control, you'll fall. If you forgive, you'll be weak. None of that is true. It is the ego that fears the sky because it cannot survive in openness. The ego feeds on structure, on story, on certainty. But the soul is water. The soul is wind. The soul is light. It cannot be contained. And when you live from soul, you do not need to know. You only need to be. There is an ancient wisdom that lives inside you, a compass that doesn't use logic but resonance. You feel it when you are near truth. You feel it when you are near joy. You feel it when something heavy suddenly feels light, and you know this is the path. Follow that. That is your wings speaking, and they will never lead you astray. But you must be willing to silence the noise, to step away from the collective panic, the chronic comparison, the constant mental commentary. You must dare to pause, to breathe, to listen inwardly, because in that space, the divine speaks, not with thunder, but with stillness, not with answers, but with presence. And that presence is what lifts you. You are not waiting for the sky to open. You are remembering that you are already in it. The weight you've been carrying is not keeping you grounded. It's keeping you distracted from the fact that you are already soaring. You just haven't opened your eyes to it. The more you release, the clearer you see, the lighter you become, and the more you begin to trust not the future, not the outcome, but yourself, your soul, your center. This is the liberation the saints spoke of. The freedom the mystics danced in, the peace the sages pointed to when they said, "Be still and know." Know what? Know that you are already home. Know that the wings were never outside of you. Know that everything you've ever sought is not in the distance, it is within. But it cannot be felt while carrying weight that was never meant to be yours. So lay it down, beloved soul. Lay down the proving. Lay down the defending. Lay down the striving. Lay down the waiting for permission. You are allowed to be light. You are allowed to be free. You are allowed to fly, not someday, not when it all makes sense, not when they apologize, but now. Now is your moment. Now is your portal. Now is the beginning of the rest of your flight. When the soul begins to remember its weightlessness, a quiet revolution takes place. Not in the external world, but in the inner kingdom. This is the true uprising, not against others, not against life, but against the false self you've been conditioned to carry. This uprising is not loud. It doesn't shout. It doesn't need applause. It simply refuses to carry what is no longer aligned with light. And in this refusal, a powerful truth emerges. You are not here to hold on. You are here to flow through. You are not a container for pain. You are a vessel for presence. And presence is too sacred to be filled with what is no longer real. So if it no longer feels like love, it no longer belongs in your hands. If it no longer resonates with peace, it no longer belongs in your heart. And if it no longer brings you closer to truth, it no longer belongs in your mind. You came to this earth not to collect, but to remember. And memory true memory is not about the past. It is about your origin, the divine essence that preceded all experience, all trauma, all identity. The light you were before the name, before the wound, before the story. That light has never been dimmed, only buried. And every act of letting go is an excavation, a return, a resurrection. The ego will call it loss, but the soul knows better. The soul calls it rebirth. Yes, rebirth. You will be reborn many times in this life, not just once. And each rebirth will cost you the version of yourself you thought you had to be. Each flight will ask you to shed another layer, to drop another burden, to trust more deeply than before. This is not regression, this is expansion. Every shedding is sacred. You shed illusions, you shed attachments, you shed roles you never truly agreed to, and one by one you return to the center of who you are, vast, open, free. And when you return there, the world begins to look different. You no longer react, you respond. You no longer perform, you presence. You no longer grasp, you allow. You no longer ask, how do I control this? But instead, what is this here to teach me? This is what it means to live from soul. And soul does not carry the past like a wound. It carries only the present like a flame. In that flame, everything that is false will burn away, and that is the grace of it. You are not being punished, you are being purified. All that is being asked of you is this: stop carrying what you don't want to become. If you hold resentment, you become it. If you carry fear, it becomes your lens. If you grip the past, it becomes your prison. But if you hold truth, you become peace. If you carry stillness, you become presence. If you walk in surrender, you become weightless. And when you become weightless, you don't even have to try to fly. You simply rise, like a feather no longer pinned down by ego, like a breath finally released into the world, like a soul no longer apologizing for its light. This is your destiny, not to strive, not to suffer, but to rise. And this rising cannot be done from effort alone. It must be done from trust. Trust that life is not working against you, it is working through you. That every detour was a redirection. That every heartbreak was a doorway. That every ending was a sacred invitation to begin again lighter this time. Have you noticed how nature never clings? The trees release their leaves without asking when the new ones will come. The river flows forward, never backward, never doubting its direction. The sun does not mourn the night, it simply returns again and again. And yet, we, the most conscious of creation, resist this natural rhythm. We hold on to last season's leaves. We grip the banks of the past. We beg the night not to fall. But healing is in the rhythm, and peace is in the release. So stop trying to force stillness through control. Allow it through surrender. Stop demanding that life obey your timeline. Let it unfold according to the greater wisdom that forms stars and births galaxies. That same wisdom is guiding your unfolding. You don't need to rush. You don't need to fight. You don't need to earn your flight. You only need to step out of the illusion that you were ever grounded to begin with. Your spirit was never bound. It was only your identification with the binding that made you feel stuck. It is not your job to carry every lesson forever. Some lessons are meant to be learned and then released. Some pains are meant to be felt and then transmuted. And some experiences are meant to pass through you, not stay inside you. Release is not rejection. It is integration. You take the wisdom. You leave the wound. You take the growth. You leave the guilt. You take the lesson. You leave the label. You are not who you were when the pain happened. You are who you became after it. And the more you release the story, the more you can honor the strength it gave you without needing to keep reliving the scene. You cannot write a new chapter while rereading the old one. And you cannot fly into your future while defending the architecture of your past. So breathe now. Breathe and ask your soul, what am I defending that I no longer even believe in? Because that is where the heaviest weights hide in old beliefs you don't even resonate with anymore. Beliefs like, I must be perfect. I'm not worthy unless I achieve. I'm only lovable if I'm needed. I can't rest until I've proven something. These beliefs are not you. They are inherited, adopted, programmed. And they are optional. Choose again. Choose freedom over form. Choose essence over expectation. Choose truth over tradition. You do not owe anyone the version of you that you've outgrown. Your only allegiance is to your becoming. And becoming requires lightness. Becoming requires courage. Becoming requires space. And above all, becoming requires letting go. There is nothing left to prove. No weight left worth carrying. You have already survived what was meant to break you. You are here, and you are free to choose peace, not someday, but now. So put it all down. The apology that never came, the identity that no longer fits, the guilt that was never yours, the grief you've already honored, the expectations that exhaust you, the fear that says you're not ready. Let it all fall. Because the moment you stop gripping the past, the future no longer frightens you. And the moment you stop defending the pain, healing finds you without effort. You don't need to chase purpose. You are purpose. Once you stop covering it up with everything you think you must be, the sky does not explain itself to the ground. It just opens wide, blue, boundless. So must you. Your lightness is your truth. Your peace is your power. And your freedom is already here beneath the weight you are finally willing to release. So rise. You're ready. Let go and fly. There is a door within you that opens only when you decide to put down the weight you were never meant to carry. That weight is resentment. That door is called forgiveness. And what lies beyond it is not weakness, not surrender, but your own unshackled freedom. You see, your soul came into this world not to hold on, but to let go. Not to collect wounds and grievances, but to grow through them and move beyond them. But the mind, that loyal servant of the ego, clutches tightly to its pain. It builds a fortress around every injustice and names it truth. It stockpiles old betrayals like sacred scrolls and keeps them on the shelves of your inner world, dusting them off with pride, as if remembering the pain is the same as preventing it. But what the mind calls protection, the soul calls imprisonment. There is no peace in holding on to anger, no joy in nursing the ache of what was. You do not become stronger by staying bitter. You do not become wiser by staying wounded. You do not become free by replaying the same hurt over and over, like a broken hymn echoing through the halls of your past. Forgiveness is not about the other. It is not a pardon for what was done, nor a denial of your pain. It is the act of removing the knife from your own heart, not because the blade didn't cut deep, but because you choose to bleed no more. To forgive is not to forget. It is to remember differently. To remember from a place of clarity rather than chaos, from love rather than fear. It is to release the story that pain is who you are and return to the truth that you are divine, that you are whole, that you are not your suffering. The great philosophers and spiritual teachers did not tell us to forgive because it is easy. They told us to forgive because it is the only way to fly. Jesus said, "Forgive them, for they know not what they do." He did not say this to comfort others. He said it to liberate himself from the cycle of pain. The Buddha taught that holding on to anger is like grasping a hot coal with the intent of throwing it at someone else. You are the one who gets burned. And even in the Stoic writings of Marcus Aurelius, you will find this wisdom repeated, that you cannot control what others do, but you can always control whether you will let it define you. So I ask you, dear soul, what are you still carrying? Whose name lives in your body like a wound that never closes? What memory still haunts the sacred quiet of your heart? You cannot move forward while dragging the past behind you like a broken cart. And you cannot awaken to the vast sky of your being while clutching tightly to the smallness of your pain. Forgiveness is not something you give to another. It is something you give to yourself, a declaration that you will no longer allow another person's unconsciousness to shape your destiny. It is a sacred refusal to let your past become your prison. You are not here to stay stuck. You are here to transform. And what transforms you is not more anger, not more revenge, not more justification, but surrender. Yes, forgiveness is surrender, but not the kind the ego fears. It is not surrendering to someone else's power. It is surrendering the illusion that you ever lost yours. When you forgive, you take your power back. You reclaim your peace. You stop waiting for someone else to make it right. You stop negotiating with ghosts. Think of the ocean. It does not try to hold back the waves. It allows them to rise, crash, dissolve, and return. That is forgiveness. It is allowing the emotions to move through you, not to stay stuck in you. It is a tide that washes away the hardened footprints of pain so that you may walk barefoot again on the shore of your now. There is no timeline for forgiveness, only a readiness. And you will know you are ready when you are more tired of suffering than you are afraid of letting go. You may think you cannot forgive until the other apologizes. But what if that apology never comes? What if the one who hurt you cannot see their blindness, cannot feel your sorrow, cannot meet you in your depth? Will you let their ignorance hold the key to your inner peace? The truth is this: your freedom has never depended on them. Your healing does not require their awakening. Your soul does not need their remorse to return to its radiance. The energy of unforgiveness creates a dam in the river of life. It blocks the flow of your joy, your vitality, your intuition. And when that dam is released, when forgiveness breaks it open, your spirit rushes forward like a flood, powerful, clear, and reborn. You were not created to live in a cage of old emotions. You are not your pain, you are not your past, you are not the names they called you or the moments they abandoned you. You are the one who survived, the one who still breathes, the one who even now has the power to love again. Forgiveness is not forgetting what happened. It is remembering who you are. You are a soul made of stardust and silence. You are the timeless breath of the divine. And no wound, no matter how deep, can erase your eternal worth. When you choose forgiveness, you join with the great current of healing that flows through all life. You participate in the sacred act of renewal. You declare to the universe, I am no longer a victim of my past. I am the author of my now. And the moment you do this, the very moment the chains fall, the air becomes lighter. The heart, once bruised and clenched, begins to soften. The breath becomes a prayer. And something ancient within you exhales for the first time in years. This is the miracle of forgiveness. Not that it changes the past, but that it transforms your relationship to it. You begin to see the pain as teacher, the betrayal as mirror, the wound as initiation. You understand that nothing was wasted, that even the darkest chapter was guiding you home. You may ask, but how do I forgive what feels unforgivable? And the answer, my friend, is not in your mind. It is in your willingness. Forgiveness is not an intellectual act. It is a sacred decision. You don't have to feel it yet. You only have to be willing. Willing to loosen your grip, willing to see differently, willing to heal. And from that willingness, grace will come. A new perspective will dawn. The heart, once closed like a fist, will begin to open like a flower in the sun. You don't need to know how to forgive. You only need to say yes to the healing that is already trying to reach you. Your soul is not interested in blame. It is not interested in being right. It is interested in being free. And forgiveness, true, deep soul level forgiveness is the key. There is a sacred moment not seen with the eyes, but felt within the very breath when you finally realize that holding on is hurting more than it's helping. And in that moment, something ancient in you weeps, not out of sadness, but out of relief, because the soul has waited lifetimes for you to come to this edge, the edge where you no longer define yourself by the pain inflicted upon you. This is where transformation begins. To forgive is to choose truth over trauma. It is to let the memory exist without letting it possess you. It is to open the gates of your being and allow the light to pour in where darkness once lived, like a tenant overstaying its welcome. You do not need to fix the past. You do not need to rewrite it. You only need to stop carrying it as if it were your identity. You are not what they did. You are not what they didn't do. You are not the brokenness you inherited. You are the awareness watching it all unfold. And that awareness is untouched. It is eternal. It is divine. The ego wants justice. It wants the scales balanced. It wants the pain repaid. But the soul only wants peace. And peace cannot exist where you are still rehearsing your pain. You may think you are protecting yourself by not forgiving. You may believe that staying angry keeps you safe. But in truth, it is like drinking poison every day, hoping it will harm someone else. It won't. It is only your joy, your vitality, your presence that is being quietly eroded. Forgiveness is not saying what they did was okay. It is saying that you will no longer allow what they did to determine who you are. The soul, when it forgives, does not become weaker. It becomes lighter. It becomes clearer. It becomes closer to its original essence. For the true self was never wounded, never tarnished. Only the mind, the story, the image, only that was bruised, but not the soul. The soul remains what it has always been, free. There is profound wisdom in allowing the past to be past. You do not owe it your allegiance. You do not owe your suffering loyalty. You owe yourself freedom. You owe yourself the release of that heavy burden, because life is not meant to be carried. It is meant to be lived. The lotus grows in the mud, not despite it, but because of it. So too do you rise, not in the absence of pain, but in your sacred decision to grow beyond it. The mind may say, but I can't forgive, it hurts too much. And that is okay. That is not the voice of weakness. That is the voice of someone standing at the threshold of healing. Even the smallest willingness to forgive cracks the door open. And once light finds its way in, healing becomes inevitable. You do not have to forgive perfectly. You only have to forgive honestly. And honesty means acknowledging the pain, not avoiding it. It means sitting with the grief, the rage, the sorrow, not as enemies, but as guests. Let them come, let them speak, let them leave. Your job is not to suppress. Your job is to allow and then to release. Because that is forgiveness. It is the art of letting go without needing to forget, without needing to be repaid, without needing it to be fair. It is a return to the only place where peace is possible, the present moment. Every time you choose to forgive, you return to yourself. You come back to the breath. You come back to stillness. You come back to the open field of now, where nothing is missing and everything begins again. Forgiveness is not a single act. It is a spiritual practice, a way of being, a daily choice to choose love over fear, to choose freedom over bondage, to choose now over then. And with each choice, you soften. With each choice, you rise. You begin to see that the person who hurt you was hurt too, that their unconsciousness was their jail cell, that their blindness was their burden. You don't excuse it, but you see it. And in that seeing, you release the need to make them your jailer, because you are no longer a prisoner. The moment you forgive, you leave the cell. And the lock was never on the door, it was only in your mind. This is not a message for the faint of heart. Forgiveness takes courage. It takes spiritual maturity. It takes a willingness to live by higher laws than the ego can comprehend. It is the highest form of self-love to say, I set myself free, not because you earned it, but because I did. Do you see, dear soul? Forgiveness is not for them. It never was. It's for you, for your healing, for your peace, for your life. Your heart was not designed to be a vault of pain. It was meant to be a sanctuary of love. And love cannot grow where resentment roots. So you must become the gardener. Pull out the weeds of bitterness, water the soil with grace, let the light in, and watch as joy, real joy, returns. Not the kind that depends on anyone else, but the kind that arises simply because you are no longer at war with yourself. When you forgive, you return to the sacred truth that you are not separate, that we are all threads in the same divine fabric. And what you do to another, you do to yourself. When you forgive another, you extend grace inward. When you release your grip on their wrongs, you loosen the noose around your own soul. And yes, it takes time, it takes patience, but it begins with one choice: to stop carrying what doesn't belong to your future. You are not here to drag chains. You are here to spread wings. Let this be your moment of decision, the moment you choose to lay the weight down, to breathe deeper, to feel again, to live, because life, true life, begins where forgiveness flows. There is a silence that follows true forgiveness, not the silence of suppression, but the silence of liberation. It is the stillness that comes when the storm has passed, when the inner courtroom has closed, when you no longer need to keep replaying the trial in your mind. And in that silence, you meet yourself again. Not the wounded self, not the defensive self, but the original self, the self before the story, before the betrayal, before the pain had a name. That self has always been there, waiting for you to put down your sword, waiting for you to stop demanding justice in a world that rarely gives it, waiting for you to realize that freedom isn't given, it's chosen. Forgiveness is that choice. It is not an escape from truth, it is a deeper truth. It is not turning a blind eye, it is opening both eyes fully and deciding to see through them with love instead of fear. You were never meant to be a reservoir of resentment. You are a vessel for light. And when you empty yourself of bitterness, you make space for the radiance of your soul to come forth again. No one else needs to change for you to forgive. The apology may never come. The understanding may never arrive. The other may never even know how deeply they hurt you. But none of that matters. Because forgiveness is not about changing the past. It's about reclaiming your power in the present. You are not bound to the events of yesterday unless you tie yourself to them. You are not sentenced to keep reliving the injury unless you choose to stay within the walls of it. The door has always been open. You've just needed the courage to walk through it. Let go of the belief that suffering equals strength. Let go of the idea that being right is more important than being free. Let go of the inner posture that says, until they see, I won't heal, because they may never see, and you deserve to heal anyway. Your healing is not conditional. Your joy is not contingent on someone else's remorse. You are the source. You are the healer. You are the one who gets to decide how long the pain stays. Imagine your spirit like a bird in a cage, the door wide open, yet unmoving, believing the bars are still there. Forgiveness is the act of realizing there were no bars, only the memory of them, and then spreading your wings. When you forgive, you do not lose yourself. You recover yourself. You become whole, not by rewriting the story, but by rewriting your relationship to it. You look at your pain and say, I bless you. You taught me, but you do not define me. This is how the soul evolves. Not through perfection, but through the sacred choice to rise again and again above the level of injury. To meet darkness not with more darkness, but with the light that says, I am more than what happened to me. You become the space through which healing enters the world. And in doing so, you become a healing to others. You begin to understand why the greatest spiritual teachers walk through betrayal, abandonment, suffering, not to remain stuck in it, but to show what is possible when love is chosen anyway. They taught forgiveness not because it was easy, but because it was transformational. The Course in Miracles reminds us all forgiveness is self-forgiveness, because when you forgive another, you release your own mind from the grip of judgment. You stop punishing yourself by carrying the burden of what cannot be changed. To forgive is not to condone, but to transcend. You rise, you bless, you release, and in that release, you discover a new kind of power, not the power that dominates, but the power that liberates. The power that sets your inner world free so your outer life may follow. There's nothing weak about forgiveness. It is the greatest strength the human spirit can embody. Anyone can fight. Anyone can resent. Anyone can stay wounded. But to love in the face of injury, to release when revenge seems justified, to rise when bitterness feels more familiar, that is mastery. That is the divine in human form. That is you when you remember who you are. So I ask you again, what are you still holding? Whose face still lives in the shadows of your thoughts? What moment still echoes in your chest when silence falls? Let it come to the surface. Let it rise like steam from the body. Don't judge it, just witness it with the eyes of compassion, not contempt. And then bless it. Say, I forgive you. I forgive myself. I forgive this moment for being as it was, and mean it, even if your voice trembles, even if the hurt still lingers, even if your hands shake from the weight of letting go, because forgiveness is not a one-time act. It is a rhythm, a devotion, a return. Every time your mind goes back to the wound, you gently guide it back to love. It is a spiritual muscle. The more you use it, the stronger you become. And eventually the pain that once screamed now whispers. And then one day it vanishes like fog lifting from a valley. And you are still here, stronger, softer, more radiant than ever. This is the truth, beloved. You were not born to hold grudges. You were born to hold light. You were not born to carry pain. You were born to carry peace. You were not born to relive the past. You were born to create the future. And the moment you forgive truly, deeply, and fully, that future begins. There is a softness that emerges in your being. The moment you forgive, not because you have forgotten, but because you have remembered what truly matters. You remember that love is who you are, not what they gave. You remember that peace is not something you wait for, it is something you claim. You remember that you are not the wounded child still begging for recognition. You are the eternal soul stepping back into your power. Forgiveness is not an act of erasing, but of alchemizing. You take what was once heavy and you transmute it into light. You take what once hurt and you turn it into wisdom. You take what was meant to shatter you and you allow it to sculpt the highest version of you. And what is this highest version? It is the you who knows that nothing outside can take away the divinity within. It is the you who understands that no one can truly harm you because your essence is untouchable. They may bruise the body, they may betray the trust, but they cannot scar the soul unless you let the wound linger through unforgiveness. And so you choose to release, not because it feels good in the moment, but because you are ready to stop giving your future to your past. The longer you hold on to resentment, the longer you delay your destiny. Each time you revisit the hurt with bitterness, you say to life, I'm not ready to move forward. But each time you choose forgiveness, even in a whisper, you open the gates for grace to flow again. Life responds to that. The universe breathes a little easier when you choose love. Creation expands when you stop contracting in pain. Forgiveness is not weakness. It is fierce. It requires a kind of inner strength that most people never cultivate because it demands that you rise above the story. It asks you to see through spiritual eyes, eyes that perceive not what was done, but what can be learned, what can be healed, what can be transcended. It is one thing to be right. It is another to be free. And make no mistake, the world does not need more people proving they are right. The world needs more people willing to be free. Free of stories, free of blame, free of the identity that clings to victimhood like a shield, free of the endless if-onlys that circle the mind like birds without nests, free of waiting for others to redeem what they broke. You do not need anyone else to give you closure. Closure is an illusion, a waiting room of suffering. You don't need closure. You need clarity. You need to see that healing was never about the one who hurt you. It was always about your relationship to yourself. When you forgive, you reclaim that relationship. You say to your own heart, I am ready to honor you. I am ready to live for you. I am ready to stop bleeding from wounds that were never yours to carry forever. And in that moment, you awaken. You awaken to the truth that your peace is more important than your pride, that your future deserves more than the echo of betrayal, that your presence cannot coexist with poison. Yes, resentment is poison, subtle, addictive, justified, but poison still. And the only antidote is the fierce grace of forgiveness. Grace that says, I release you, not because you deserve it, but because I do. Grace that says, I will not shrink into bitterness. I will not bow to pain. I will not become what hurt me. Grace that says, I will choose love. I will walk free. I will trust the process of life again. Because life is always waiting with open hands. But it cannot fill what you keep clenching. It cannot bless what you keep guarding. It cannot flow through a vessel that refuses to empty. Forgiveness is the great emptying. It is pouring out the stale wine of the past to make room for the living water of now. It is uncurling your fingers from the stories that once made you feel safe, but now only make you feel stuck. You are not stuck because of what happened. You are stuck because of how you've held it. And the miracle is this. The moment you change how you hold it, the moment you offer it back to the divine, the moment you say, I no longer need to carry this, you become weightless. And with that weightlessness comes vision, clarity, strength, compassion, joy. You begin to see the hidden architecture of the pain, how it shaped your resilience, how it opened your empathy, how it taught you what matters most. You begin to see how every soul is on a journey, and some are still asleep, some hurt others because they don't know how to do anything else. And while that does not excuse the harm, it allows you to release the illusion that their behavior was about you. It wasn't. It never was. It was about their own wound, their own fear, their own confusion. And you, being the light you are, were simply present when their darkness came through. You can honor the truth of your pain and still choose not to let it define you. You can acknowledge the impact and still choose your own liberation. You can tell the truth and still let it go. Because forgiveness is not the absence of memory. It is the presence of wisdom. You remember, but differently. You remember without hate, without shame, without vengeance. You remember with gentleness, with compassion, with a quiet, unshakable strength. You become a living prayer, not for justice, not for revenge, but for peace. A prayer that sounds like this: I forgive you, I release you, I bless the path that brought us here, and I walk forward free. And now, here you are standing at the edge of a new life. A life no longer built on wounds, but on wisdom. A life no longer defined by stories of pain, but by acts of grace. A life that no longer waits for someone to make it right, because you have made the most important choice of all to set yourself free. You may feel lighter already, or you may still feel the ache of letting go, but know this: whatever you feel is right, whatever arises is holy, because in the sacred act of forgiveness, everything becomes a teacher, even your trembling, even your tears. You are walking into the open now, into a future unshackled, into a heart unburdened, into a soul that no longer confuses its light with its losses. And though the world may still spin in its chaos, though others may never understand your depth or honor your path, you will know something they don't. That you are free, that no past can imprison the spirit that chooses to forgive, that no wound is stronger than the one who is willing to heal, that the highest act of courage is to love anyway, to release anyway, to rise anyway. So breathe deeply now, not as the one who was hurt, but as the one who has returned to wholeness. Breathe as the soul who no longer seeks permission to live unburdened. Breathe as the sacred, shining, radiant being you've always been, now uncloaked by the fog of old pain. This is not the end. This is your beginning. The beginning of a life rooted not in what broke you, but in what awakened through the breaking. You are not here to carry scars like trophies. You are here to turn wounds into wings. And forgiveness? Forgiveness is the wind beneath them. Now fly.